Amna, it's so lovely to see you. Please, can you just start by telling us a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Dr. Amna, a consumer behaviour and retailing expert, public speaker, and I'm an academic. I've been researching consumer behaviour and retail for over a decade now.
So Amna, how is the cost of living crisis impacting consumer confidence and the wider retail sector?
To understand and appreciate the cost of living crisis for the consumer, we need to have a look at all of the uncertainty that they've experienced. So it started off with Brexit, a political crisis. We then moved on to a health crisis, which was the pandemic, and now we're in a cost of living crisis. And consumers for a generation haven't witnessed costs this high. So month on month, we're seeing rises in interest rates. Food inflation has reached the highest point for 45 years, and many of the energy bills are increasing. So naturally, the consumer's first thing would be to try and reduce their spend. And what we've witnessed in the cost of living crisis is many consumers have moved to own branded goods. So they've switched from branded goods to own branded goods. You're seeing the rise of consuming in discount retailers like Aldi and Lidl, and even supermarket brands. But another thing that consumers have also done is we've seen the rise of pre-loved. Charity shops seem to be the consumer's best friend right now, where they're shopping in them more. And all of these ways are ways in which they can be more sustainable. So if we go back to food shopping, what consumers have said is that they want to reduce food wastage. Now that's brilliant for sustainability because they're more conscious and considered in how they're not only spending, but also how they're consuming and using those products. So in sum, what have we seen? We've seen a switching from branded to own branded goods. We've seen more sustainability in the way that they consume, whether that's pre-loved or whether that's reducing wastage. But we've also seen a more conscious and considered consumer.
How would you say bricks and mortar retail has evolved in recent years to address the rise of omnichannel retail?
We've seen a huge evolution in the store. Traditionally, online retailing was really functional and consumers used it for convenience. It was quick, simple and easy. And the store was a very hedonic space where they got lots of experiences. It was really tangible. So if you're going to buy perfume, you're going to go into store because you want to smell it. You want that experience of knowing what it feels like on your skin and what that scent's like on you. But what we've seen is omnichanneling has allowed the consumer to bring online features into offline spaces such as a store. We're seeing a lot of technology within the stores, and that's been used to create a seamless experience for the consumer. So what we've seen as an example might be in the Trafford Centre, River Island has smart fitting rooms and they're using technology to make that experience better for the consumer. Or you might see scan and go in Zara store, for example, where you can scan items and just go, or check the availability of items. And what we're seeing is a store isn't just a place for experiences, you're bringing experiences with convenience, and that's exactly what the consumer wants. They want more convenience, quick, simple, easy, but also that experience, that tangibility, the sensory feelings that they get in the store. And when you can marry the two, it's a win-win situation.
Do you think online models have peaked post-COVID?
The pandemic was a great time for online retailers because the stores were closed. Post-pandemic, we've seen a real shift in consumption. The consumer was desperate to get back into stores. They wanted to have that community and sensory experience. But what the pandemic actually did is it raised the consumption online, but it also introduced and highlighted the bottlenecks of online consumption, such as a high level of returns. And that's not something that anybody anticipated. So what we've got now is that many consumers are buying a lot online, but they're also returning a lot online, which is costing online retailers a significant amount because we know that reverse logistics, sending stuff back, costs twice the amount as it does to send it to the consumer. So that's an issue that they have to deal with now. And that's when the store becomes a huge asset because it allows the consumer to take the goods back to store. It's an incentive for the consumer because they're not having the cost of sending it back, but it's an incentive for the store too and the retailer because they're reducing those logistical costs of sending it back and then putting it back into the system. The store has become a wonderful asset for retailers now. But what we've also noticed is online pure play retailers have known the importance of a physical space, and we can see that with the likes of Gymshark, a brand that has always been online but has now chosen to have a physical space in retailing because they understand that communities are developed in stores, relationships are developed in stores. If you want something functional, which is just to sell, then maybe online is great, but it's at a lower price point. Whereas when you come into the store, You build connections, you build relationships, consumers understand your offer and purpose better. And you can also hold events. So Gymshark use it to hold events, bring their consumers together from all different types of demographics, different types of consumption patterns. So what online stores does, it creates a community of consumers that love your brand, they're emotionally connected to your brand, and that will actually help them to continue to shop. So the idea is build, 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 because if you build those relationships, the sales will look after themselves.
How do you think technology is shaping retailers' relationships with customers?
Technology has been a huge asset for retailers. It's allowed them to fundamentally change their offering to the consumer. Let's start with data. Data provides more insights, and if you've got more insights, you know your consumer better. It allows you to serve your consumer better. Personalisation, targeted information, which consumer doesn't want a more bespoke offering to them? And that's what tech enables. But that's not the only thing. Tech has allowed more convenience. Consumers live an increasingly busy lifestyle. They want quick, simple, easy. And technological solutions have allowed you to be able to get your delivery in 15 minutes, to be able to track your Uber, to be able to do all of these things. Technology has been the key facilitator. But it's not just about the speed, and it's not just about getting closer to the consumer. We've seen disruption in new models being created. For example, rental consumption has taken off because of technology. It's enabled the consumer to get items from an online rental store seamlessly. And this is a seamless experience that tech allows that has really elevated the consumer's experience with brands and retailers.
And what impact is ethical consumerism having on retail models and how retailers engage with customers?
We've seen a huge rise in ethical consumption. Post-pandemic, consumers have been more interested and engaged in ethical consumption. Why? Because during the pandemic, they took a moment to think, reflect, and reconsider their consumption patterns. And what we've witnessed is that many consumers are interested in rental consumption and pre-loved consumption. So as a result, we've seen the emergence of technological retail models which are servicing rental consumption. For example, Her or Higher Street, where the consumer will rent an item and send it back. It's a really sustainable way of consuming because the products get used for a lot longer, they're put back into the system, and they're not gathering dust in a consumer's wardrobe. So all of a sudden we've seen this rise in rental consumption, but it's not just about the retail models, it's about the consumer as well. Consumers are really social media savvy, they want to recreate their identity all the time, and having a rental consumption allows you to continuously switch your garments and showcase the identity creation of having new garments every time that you want to post something. So it works hand in hand. We've also witnessed a rise of pre-loved consumption, where consumers are really interested in consuming garments that have been used before. And we've witnessed that more in the cost of living crisis. It's almost like the crisis has accelerated this trend because consumers are squeezed with their spend, so now they are using more pre-loved items. Many retailers have adopted this shift because they know that the consumer wants and desires pre-loved consumption. Zara is offering pre-loved, and Pretty Little Thing, a fast fashion brand, is also offering a pre-loved consumption for the consumer. And this is going to be a real trend as we go forward, where we're going to see rental and pre-loved consumption actually rival fast fashion retailing. One of the key challenges for retailers is the price point. For many consumers, fast fashion models offer the best price point. For example, a dress from Pretty Little Thing might be £12 or £7, and that's really attractive for the younger generation consumer, especially the Gen Z and Gen Alpha consumers who don't have as much income to spend. So they're all of a sudden stuck within this challenge of whether they can be ethical or whether they should go for fast fashion and stay cool and savvy and relate to their consumers in their demographic. So all of a sudden this is a huge challenge, but rental consumption and pre-loved consumption really is a response to this because they're cheaper alternatives, and that consumer is engaging with it. We can see that 50% of the Gen Z consumer want to do pre-loved consumption and 50% of them want to engage in rental, which is a huge win-win because they can avoid the prices of fast fashion retail and shop in much more sustainable models.
And how important do you think it is for brands and retail companies to be making and fulfilling their ESG promises around having values and being purpose-led?
Consumers are increasingly interested in a retailer's values and purpose, and they don't just want the retailer to talk about it, they want to see it in action. And many retailers are taking the step to actually set up their own foundations, charitable causes, and this really connects with the Gen Z consumer because they want to be more sustainable. For them, it's not just about buying the brand, it's about understanding how that brand adds to the community. How are they ethically aligned with their purpose and values, and how does that reflect on the way that the products are made and the way that the products are sold? And we're going to see a rise in that consumption as the consumer becomes more ethical, more sustainable, and more responsible in their consumption.
And how do you think influencers are changing marketing models and brand perceptions?
The emergence of social media has really led to this huge craze for influencers to be part of your marketing. And what we've seen is the popularity of influencers actually helps to create awareness and interest in the brands. But they're not risk-free because the influencer can do whatever they like in your products, and it can be antisocial, it can be negative and harming for your brand, and those associations will stick with the consumer about your brand. Not only just about what the person did, it's about what the person did while they were wearing your brand or while they were using your brand. And that's a significant issue because you might not have the legal protection that you need to control that. But there are also other risks involved for using influencers. Sometimes they're not relevant, sometimes they don't connect with the consumer. And consumers are continuously looking for authentic influencers because what they find is many marketing companies use them, but they're not authentic and real. And consumers are wise to that now. They know that you're just tapping into an influencer that's really, really popular, but they're not really using your brand because they love it or are interested in it. So for brands, they need to consider whether that influencer actually relates to the products that they're selling. So there are huge benefits of using influencers, but there are a lot of risks involved too. And there is a need to be protected and to protect your brand, essentially, because they can do more harm than good if they use it in the wrong way.
So if I could ask you, Amna, to do a bit of future gazing, where would you think retail is going to go in the next few years? What's it going to look like?
So the first key thing that we're going to witness is the importance of the store as a retail asset. We talk about the death of the high street, but really that isn't the reality. The retailers that stay relevant and close to their consumers are really going to flourish because the retail store allows you to create community. It allows you to create spontaneity. It allows you to create experiences, and this is what the consumer wants. Increasingly, we're seeing store destinations, whether that's a pop-up or whether that's within a store offering, more change. We want temporary spaces. So for example, influencers are using these spaces because they're online and they're coming offline because they want to connect with their consumer. So the store becomes that key asset to create relationships. We'll see the emergence of communities around brands, and retailers will use a store space to create the community, whether that's having an event in your store or whether that's a way to engage in various offerings that you provide. But aside from the store, we have to look at technology and what technology is going to do for retailing, because it's an important part of the future. We're seeing the emergence of AI, artificial intelligence models, which are going to make the retail offering and service different and novel, which is going to create a lot of interest from the consumer, but it's also going to streamline service experiences for the retailer too. We're seeing the rise of gamification in the sense of Temu, for example. They're using a lot of gamification principles on their online offering, and we're going to see that more because that creates a stickiness for the consumer to stick with those brands. And we're going to see that whether we're going to see that more online or offline, we'll see that more in principle. But then we have the emergence of augmented reality and virtual reality, which we'll see in various different forms. So the future looks great for retailers, and there's a lot of things to look forward to.